Welcome to Drama-Free Healthy Living with Jess Cording. I'm your host, Jess Cording. I'm a registered dietitian, health coach, and author, and I'm here to help you streamline your wellness routine and establish a sane, more balanced relationship with food and fitness so you can reach your goals without losing your mind. On this podcast, we'll talk about nutrition, exercise, self-care, mindset, and more. I'll be bringing you interviews and expert insight on the topics that matter to your health and wellness. Hi, and welcome back to the Drama-Free Healthy Living podcast. I'm your host, Jess Cording. And today I wanted to share a few of my favorite tips for getting back into a healthy routine after maybe you've been out for a while. And this is something I talk about all the time with my clients. And I think it's important to address this at different times. Sometimes we're talking about someone's just been on vacation for, a week or two, or someone's been traveling a lot for work and it's really been hard to sustain what they perceive as like the healthy routine. Or maybe just someone's been going through a really stressful time. Maybe they've been sick. Maybe they've been caring for a loved one who's been sick. There's so many things that can pull us out of our daily routines. And that's just part of being a human on this planet, right? And I think that it is very easy to get caught up in this idea of on plan, off plan. I know if you've been with me a while, you've heard me talk about this before, but we live in a culture of extremes, and this does not serve us well. I think what is very important is to acknowledge that there is no one perfect routine. There is no rule that says you have to do things the same all the time. What's really important is doing what we need to do to feel in alignment with our health, with our values, doing what we can to feel like the best version of ourselves that we can be at that point in time. It's also important to just be patient with ourselves, right? There are times where there's a lot more going on than other times. And there are other things that might need to be taking precedent. Whereas other times, there may be other things that are top of mind, top of their priority list. And just to know that it's not one stagnant destination of like, yes, this is what is considered like success or the perfect version. It's just knowing that there may be a few versions. So something that I do work on with my clients is coming up with a few different versions of healthy routines for them. Things that will be sustainable, doable. If they have, maybe there's the version of when things are more calm and predictable. There's the version for maybe when things are a little more chaotic. Maybe there's the travel version. And it's okay to have these different versions. So I just wanted to start off with that. But I wanted to share today several of my top tips. Talk about 7 main things. And I'm going to share them with you right now, what they are, and then kind of go through them one by one. But so I think number 1, you want to accept where you are and release any guilt you might have. 2, start small with nutrition. 3, easing back into movement. 4, reestablish a healthy sleep routine. 5, plan for simple wins. Yes, simple wins. 6, check in about your mindset, embracing the process, not perfection. And 7, consistency over intensity. So, all right, let's start with the first one, accepting where you are and releasing guilt. And as I said, there is no perfect way to be. I think it's just, I want to just say it again, like it is totally normal to go through phases where routines slip, especially after times, maybe travel, I think times we're really busy, really high stress times, times we're going through big life changes. So whatever you can do to avoid self-criticism, I would encourage that and just shift your energy to focusing on moving forward with small positive actions that help you move in the direction that you want to be going in. So nutrition, this is something that could be an entire episode in and of itself. As a registered dietitian, I've been in practice for over a decade, 11, 12 years at the time of recording of this podcast. This is a big part of what I do. But I'm going to keep it short today. But just, I think one thing we overlook a lot is the importance of hydration. Like, this is something that's so often neglected during travel, during busy periods. And sometimes it's conscious. If someone's like on the go a lot, they don't want to have to be using the restroom very often. I definitely have had that conversation with people so much throughout my years in practice. Sometimes they're just busy and focused, or, when we're really stressed out, we're really busy, we're not as likely to be tuned into our bodies. Sometimes that takes a little extra effort. So we might not be feeling as in tune with sensations of like hunger and thirst. We might have to like, actually ask ourselves, have I had anything to drink in the last few hours? So stuff like that. It's just important to be mindful of. So I would say just start each day. This is one of my favorites. Just start when you wake up in the morning, have a big ass glass of water before you have coffee, before other stuff. Like just drink that water as you're getting ready for the day. If you prefer to chug it first thing, whatever works for you. But that is a great time of day to just kick off hydration. Also really good for digestion in the morning. But that said, like, you also want to make sure you're drinking through the day. So if you need to set reminders on your phone, you need to keep a bottle of water in easy reach. Make it a habit of having a glass of water with each meal and one between each meal, whatever makes sense for you, but make it happen. You will feel so much better. So, okay, so balanced meals. I talk a lot about the importance of blood sugar balance. So, are we having a combination of protein, fat, and fiber at our meals? So, complex carbohydrates, for example, are a great source of fiber. When I say complex carbs, I mean like whole grains, beans, lentils, high fiber fruits, things that take a long time to digest, starchy vegetables like sweet potatoes and corn. Um, and things like it's like protein foods, that's where you're getting like your meat, poultry, fish, eggs, your cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, tofu, tempeh, all that stuff. Healthy fats, when I'm talking about healthy fats, I mean like olive oil and avocado oil, avocado, olives, nuts and seeds. So we want to make sure we're incorporating these foods throughout the day and that we're eating that combination spread throughout the day. Like I don't encourage, like a mistake I see so many people make is they have like very tiny, tiny meals during the day, often trying to completely avoid carbs during the day. And then nighttime is like a giant meal with like tons and tons of pasta and rice. And or that person, I see this also very frequently. They will eat very little through the day or eat kind of like in a very narrow window of what they've deemed acceptable. And this is really common after a period of indulgence when someone feels like they need to atone by like going on a very drastic restricted diet. But then come nighttime, it's like a free for all in that person's home. They're eating all the snacks. They're reaching for things that they've been trying to avoid during the day, like as they've been white knuckling it, and then nighttime comes and they're just like, "I'll forget it, screw it. I'm just going to eat all the things." Or, people, if they're not eating enough during the day, they might be physically hungry, normal, right? But then they will end up eating like they're trying to avoid like snack foods, for example, or there's something, chocolate. This is my favorite. Someone, instead of like letting themselves have one piece of chocolate after a meal, they'd be like, oh, well, I ate so much crap over the holidays. Like, I can't eat chocolate. I'm not allowed to eat chocolate. So then they'll have a piece of fruit after dinner. Okay, cool. But then they're not satisfied. So they're like, well, okay, now I'll have some nuts. That doesn't do it either. So then they have some popcorn, and then that still doesn't do it. So then they, eat another piece of fruit, and that doesn't do it. So then they eat a whole chocolate bar. Whereas if that person maybe just had like one piece of chocolate and allowed themselves to enjoy it, felt satisfied, um, you know, very different, that 25, 50 calorie piece of chocolate, very different from the 600 calories worth of healthy foods they were trying to eat in the journey towards trying to be satisfied with something that wasn't what they actually wanted. So I like to highlight that because sometimes after a period where someone's been out of a routine, they feel like they need to do something drastic to get back on track. And really, this is a time we should just be reprioritizing those just balanced meals to help us feel more grounded. So incorporate lots of vegetables wherever you can. Make sure there's protein at every meal. Incorporate some healthy fats, and you don't have to be afraid of carbohydrates, guys. Seriously, just when we're having carbs, we want to be pairing them with protein and fat. That is going to help us have a good experience, give our body the fuel that it needs, so we're not going through these big like swings in terms of our hunger and energy throughout the day. So just wanted to share that piece as well. And of course, if we've been out of a routine for a while, it might feel a little daunting to get back into routine with meal planning and prep. Or maybe you've never been in a routine with this before, but you're realizing through this busy period where you felt like you were just lost that it would serve you well to have some sort of meal planning and prep routine in place. And again, this does not have to be a big to do and does not have to look like an assembly line in your kitchen of like five identical meals from Monday to Friday for like every breakfast, lunch, dinner, right? But like even a little bit can make a difference. Like I don't know. I something I have found really helpful is if I buy my produce on a Friday, I'll chop whatever vegetables I can, either that Friday or that Saturdays, and then just that way when I'm going to go actually cook it through the week, it's already pre-chopped for me. You can buy stuff that's pre-chopped. I definitely, when I'm going through extra busy phases, that I take advantage of. Frozen produce, super convenient for this. You can batch cook a protein. Like I'm a huge fan of slow cooker chicken. You can just like make a couple of chicken breasts in there with some kind of liquid, maybe some spices, and then shred the meat, and then you have it to use for a few things. Pouches of tuna and salmon are really convenient. You can do hard-boiled eggs. Those are great. You can make a big batch. They last for like a week. Or you can buy eggs that are already hard-boiled. I've totally done that when I've been really busy. Open a can of beans. That's some protein for a couple meals. Tofu and tempeh, those are easy to batch cook as well. Things that are also easy to make batches of, stuff like soups, stews, chilies. A lot of these things you can also make in a slow cooker or a pressure cooker, so it's more hands off. So you have a lot of easier options. So wherever you can simplify for yourself, like if you have an hour where you can throw together a few things, take advantage. And my philosophy is I was like, all right, I'm turning on the oven, make one thing. What else can I fit in there, right? But if you're, and this is something I definitely have leaned into when I've been, after travel, like one of the most satisfying things for me, I love making like an online grocery delivery order and like scheduling it to come. Like usually I'm a little too, I don't trust like the American air travel situation enough that I maybe one day, but like I don't have the confidence to schedule delivery for the night I return. I usually will schedule delivery for the early the next morning or the next day just so that it will be it will be there. But I don't, that's something that's always given me anxiety of like, oh no, like what if I was waiting for a delivery and then my flight got canceled and, stuff like that. But you do you. So I think scheduling grocery deliveries or making a plan of knowing exactly when you plan to go get more groceries, that can also help because you have the things that you need handy. I'm also a fan of things like meal kit services, meal delivery services. And this is a category where there has been so much innovation in the last few years. There are so many good ones out there. It's, I could probably do an entire episode devoted just to that. I don't have any current, at the time of this recording, financial relationships with these companies, but a few that I will utilize in my own life. I really like Hungry Root. I think they do a great job with both like meal prep, like grocery items. Um, and then for I also have really enjoyed Factor meals. I think Daily Dose also has some really nice meal plans. A lot of my clients really like Green Chef. I've used HelloFresh and Blue Apron. They're not my favorites. I find they're a little heavy on the starch, kind of skimpy on the veggies, but like, those are just a few examples. They've been around for a long time. So that's just scratching the surface. We could do an entire episode on this category. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few really good ones. Like my plant-based clients love Sakara Life. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but I've heard great things about their stuff too. So I would say if that's what you think would be a great fit for you, I know they can be a little expensive, but cheaper than takeout. Remember that. I think sometimes in the moment we are so like we forget about stuff like that, right? Like we see like a cost for something that we're paying for like several days worth of food, and we think, oh, that's expensive. But then if in the moment, if we're ordering takeout, that also usually has a delivery fee, we're not processing like, oh, that's also really expensive. But because it's like in the moment, and we may be like really hungry or tired or having decision fatigue, like it doesn't register it the same way. So just something to keep in mind that sometimes these services seem like they cost more, but when we compare it to what we might be spending money on otherwise, it does end up saving us money and time and energy and helps us fuel our bodies a little bit better so we can feel better. So, yeah, that's just a few things that I have found very useful for myself and for my clients for getting back into a good routine with nutrition. And then movement. This comes up a lot, exercise. Um, Again, like this is something I have seen people struggle with a lot, where they get into this narrow idea of what is considered a healthy routine. And often that the people who struggle with this the most are the same people who think that they have to be hitting the gym for an hour for it to count 6 days a week, or think they have to be going to a studio fitness class for it to be meaningful. And that is just not true. Research has shown that even small amounts of physical activity can have health benefits, physically and mentally. So, any movement is good. So I do encourage, like, if you are in a phase where things are just a little more intense, busy, you don't have your usual access to what you normally would do, any movement you can get in is going to offer some benefit. But then when you're back into a place where you can do more of your routine, like, yes, if you go to classes or you go to the gym, like, put that stuff on your calendar because that way it gives you something to look forward to. I mean, maybe I'm weird. I look forward to exercise. I mean, yeah, okay, cool. I get it. I'm a Pilates instructor. I'm a Sagittarius. Like, I like movement. Like, I acknowledge not everybody shares that with me, but put it on your calendar. If it helps to get a friend involved, meet for a walk, that can be a great way of building in some accountability. If that financial accountability of, say, like a gym membership or a studio class is not quite enough. Um, but just start, you can also start with gentle exercise, especially if you've been away from exercise for a while, maybe due to an injury, surgery, an illness. I think that it's important to start slow. Don't feel like you have to get back to where you were previously right away. Or maybe you've never really exercised before, but you've been through a time in your life that has made you realize that actually it might really be beneficial for you to be moving. It might feel good. So, that's where I'd say start with some walking, some stretching, something low impact. Um, if it helps to hire a trainer for a short period of time to kind of teach you proper form to so you can be safe. Those are all really good resources to check out. And there's also so many wonderful fitness apps now. I think that's one of the cool things that came out of the pandemic is that all these amazing digital platforms with resources like on-demand videos, live videos, all different ways of getting getting access to workouts, learning about how to do things properly to suit such a wide variety of needs and goals. So take advantage of all that. There's just so much cool stuff out there. Um, and then speaking of goals, set manageable goals, things that you can actually work towards and achieve. So, for example, if you're really busy or you're deconditioned, don't make it your goal to like run a 5K like next week, right? Like start with like 15 to 20 movements, 20 minutes, like a few times a week, and gradually increase duration and or intensity as you feel ready. And then you want to celebrate those small wins, right? Like, I mean, something I often will talk about with I feel like I'm begging my clients to strength train. That's like that is like a hill I will die on. Like strength training is so important. This has been a huge focus for me for such a long time, and it's been cool to see it actually be talked about more now in the media finally. But I still have to beg people. I think there's still this idea, and we'll see what happens with like future generations of women, but so many women are scared they're going to bulk up if they start lifting weights, and that is just not the case. So if we're talking about small wins, if you are someone who has never lifted weights before, and suddenly you start lifting like 1 or 2 pound weights a few days a week, like that's a win because that's something new and beneficial that you're doing. And if you're consistent with that, that's incredible. Or if you've been lifting weights for a while, but maybe like are we're not really making much progress, or maybe you lost some strength because you had to take a break or, were out of your routine. But then, maybe like you get back into it or you start with it again and you start to be able to increase the weight that you are able to lift. That's another win. And this is just one example. This could look like for people who like to track things like mileage with runs or walks, being able to walk further, walk farther, or run for further or farther, or just feeling better endurance, right? Like if you are someone that found that you were kind of winded after, if you're doing hills, but then you notice, oh, like when I walk up that hill, I actually don't feel that way. I feel good. It's doable. Like celebrate that stuff. And we should be celebrating our wins. And I'll share this, a little bit further, but we should definitely be celebrating our progress. Helps us stay motivated. All right, so I want to take a pause for a sec because I do want to mention sleep. And this is something I do speak about pretty frequently. This is one of my most popular workshop topics. This is a topic that comes up all the time with my clients. And sleep is really important, but it's also one of the first things to take a hit when we are dealing with a lot of stuff. So when we are in a place where we're like, okay, it is time to get back into a good sleep routine. So a few things that can be helpful. Set a consistent bedtime and wake up time. This is really helpful for training the body to recognize when it's time to sleep, when it's time to be awake. And that can take some practice, but it is one of the best things you can do. And if you've been in a phase where you've been going to bed really, really late, but you want to be going to bed early, you don't have to go from, turning in at 2 a.m. to suddenly 10 p.m., right? If 2 a.m. has been your typical bedtime, but you're trying to get earlier, maybe for the next few weeks, you turn in at, I don't know, 1:45 and gradually step it back until you're at your desired bedtime. You also want to give yourself time to wind down in the evening. So, making sure you're dimming the lights in your home, taking a break from electronics, ideally at least 30 minutes before bed. You could try reading a book, meditation, journaling, things that will help just support restful sleep and overall balance. And this is also a good time to look into, are there specific foods that might help you or sleep supplements? And this, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, though I could. It's so tempting. I love this topic. But I do have other content on food and sleep and supplements and sleep. But just to know that if that's something you're interested in, um, it's a good time to talk with your healthcare provider. So a doctor can be a good person to chat with about supplements. For example, magnesium glycinate is a really great one for sleep. To talk with them about whether that's a good fit for you, or if you already take a calcium and or vitamin D supplement. Sometimes I'll recommend taking those in the evening. So that's just something to consider. And limiting alcohol, caffeine, and large meals before bed, also one of the best things you can do. And keeping your bedroom cool, dark, and quiet. That is like sleep hygiene 101. So those are just a few things to be tuning into as you're getting your sleep into a good place. So again, with the simple wins, I know I just shared a bunch of stuff with you about nutrition and movement and sleep. But just start with little habits. If it's something like, say, one well-balanced meal a day, or a 10-minute stretch, or that morning glass of water we talked about, start with that and track your progress. Writing it down when you do it, or using a habit tracking app, anything that will help you see your improvements and that will help you stay motivated. When you see how good you're doing or how well you're doing, excuse me, that can be really powerful and it can prime you to keep going. And our mindset is another thing we should be paying attention to as we're getting back on track. And this doesn't always get the most attention, but it might be the most important one. It just remember that it's not about an all or nothing approach. It's not about the on plan, off plan bullshit that comes up all the time. Progress is still progress, even if it's slower or smaller than you think it should be, or if it's slower or smaller than it's been in the past. Progress is still progress. And just know that routines evolve over time, and we are allowed to adjust them as our life changes. It's really about creating habits that adapt to our different life phases, not us trying to adapt our life around the habits we think we should be upholding. So it's it's really important to check in with yourself and to really make sure that when we are putting habits in place or we're thinking through what we want to accomplish, that it's through the lens of what makes sense for our life right now. And then lastly, I just wanted to share that consistency over intensity is so important here. So the key to long-term success is steady, consistent effort. It is those small, sustainable steps that is way more beneficial than those intense bursts, right, that lead to burnout. Maybe you've been there where you tried to follow a super rigid diet, a super intense exercise regimen. Maybe you got a little too precious with your sleep routine, whatever it might be. And probably you found that maybe it worked for a time, but then, life got real and suddenly it just was like, oh, forget it. It had feeling like you had to throw the towel in on the whole thing because, again, that extreme mindset. If, one thing isn't working, then we just, scrap the whole thing. So just know that, steady, consistent habits that work for you, no matter how small they seem, are really important and long term offer success and long term benefit. So I just hope you found that helpful today. I know it can feel overwhelming when we're trying to get back on track and be patient with yourself. Speak to yourself kindly the way that you would speak to a friend, a child, a new pet, whatever you need. But focus on gradual, sustainable, compassionate changes that you can make to reestablish a rhythm that supports your overall well-being, not your friend, not your sister, not your colleague, what supports you. And if you want to dive deeper into any of these points, you want to hear episodes on specific topics, send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at Jess Cording. I love hearing from you. And please consider signing up for my Substack at jessicacording.substack.com. Every week, I share different tips on nutrition, movement, sleep, mental well-being, all of these things that help us feel like our grounded best self. So you can check me out on there. You'll get a free little guide for signing up, just some helpful tips. And it's been lovely to be here with you today. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Thank you for listening to Drama Free Healthy Living with Jess Cording. We'll see you next time.